strength, gentleness, born to be a queen. I'm the most powerful being in the universe, lifting those around me. You are always first.
Hello. Welcome back to Gem Talk, the podcast. I am so excited to be here. Today is episode 11, and if you guys noticed, today I have a different co-host with me. Wanda is actually traveling for business with she's gonna kill me because I cannot remember the name of the organization that she is traveling with. Crazy Like a Fox tour. I got it out, Wanda. Crazy Like a Fox tour. So she will not be with us. However, we do have in studio today the beautiful Taaj Williams. Taaj, thank you so much for joining us today. So this is our part 3. Our wrap-up, our conclusion of our series where we were talking about police and community, the relationship between the police and the community, and a lot of the different things that have been going on in our community right here in Essex County, throughout Hudson County, throughout the state of New Jersey, and again, throughout the country. So Taaj, a wonderful role model to her daughter and all of the students' hearts that she has touched. She enlightens everyone she meets, and the community knows her as a natural-born leader. I just want to officially welcome you to Gem Talk, the podcast. I appreciate you being here. And this is really going to give us an opportunity to kind of tie everything in together. So just to kind of backtrack for a second, we did have on a civil rights attorney who gave his perspective. We also had Mike Tyree, who was a former police officer, who gave his perspective. And then 2 weeks ago, we had on a activist who let us know just like the different things that we can do to kind of prepare for protesting and everything that takes. And so it is an honor to have you with us to tie it all together because you and your family have experienced this firsthand.
Yes.
And so I am honored to hear your story. And I don't even know 100. I did a little bit of research, but I don't know 100% of your story. But just to kind of touch base on it. So April 11th marked the 20th anniversary of the passing, rather, I don't even want to say the passing,
right.
The killing, the murder of your brother, Earl Faison. Yeah. Am I saying correct, Faison?
You know what? I've heard so many different
renditions of his last name.
So it's like, we pronounced his name and he's my half brother, so he had his mom's last name, which was Faison. So that's what we would say.
Okay,
but we would hear so much, like all the time. We would hear Faison. So it's almost like I don't know.
Okay, so he was 27 years old when he was killed at the hands of the Orange Police. And to my understanding, he was innocent, he was unarmed, and it was a case of mistaken identity. I do first want to send condolences to the police officer, Joyce Carnegie, who was killed. But as a result of her death, he, quote unquote, fit the description, which is something that we hear all too often. And as a result of that, your brother was targeted by the Orange Police.
Right.
I don't want to put words into your mouth, and I don't want to change your story. So I'm going to let you take it away and just kind of explain what happened, what took place 27 years ago. No, 20 years ago.
20
I'm sorry.
years ago. Yeah. So I can say that everything that you said is pretty much exact. The biggest thing was there was like a manhunt happening after Joyce Carnegie's death. So there were like road stops. I remember at this time I was 17 years old. I was a senior in high school. But I remember, every time we lived in the nearby area. So every time we went outside, we would just see like roadblocks. So, just cars being stopped. They were passing out like a sketch of this person that killed the police officer. So the interesting thing that I remember that I always like to share, I remember when we saw the sketch, we said that the sketch looked like one of our friends. So we were telling him, like, you need to stay out of, the way because this looks like you. And sure enough, like a couple days later, like my brother went missing. And he lived around the corner from where the killing took place.
No, where did it take place? So for people who are unfamiliar with the story.
Okay, so Joyce Carnegie was killed on, gosh, I don't even know the name of the street. I think it's Center Street
In
off
Orange.
of in Orange,
Okay.
right off of, I want to say Freeway Drive.
Okay.
And then so my brother at the time, he lived right around the corner. It was like some buildings that were there, and he was pulled over. He had literally came out, from what I understand, he had came out of his home, and he got into his girlfriend's home at the time. He got into a taxi, and like shortly after he got into the taxi, his cab was pulled over. So allegedly, the story was that he got out of his cab after being pulled over, and when the cop confronted him, basically saying that he resembled the sketch or whatever, and apparently they said my brother just took off running. So now we don't know any of this,
Right.
like nothing. We don't know anything. We only know what they told us, which a lot of what they told to us ended up just being very conflicting. Once we sat through the trial. But that's pretty much all that we know. We got a call. I remember being in my room, and I remember my sister coming into my room with my mom, and they were like trying to figure out these mysterious calls that were being made. So 20 years ago, we didn't have cell phones, right?
Right.
So my brother had a pager, and the calls that we were getting, apparently it seemed like someone trying to piece together who my brother was, right? That's what
Okay.
we were thinking, because no one had heard from him. So it was just kind of weird. Like, so once no one heard from him, everybody started to call each other. And so then all I know is everybody left my room. I went to sleep. The next day I went to school. And I had an eerie feeling. I really, really did. And I think I remember it was, we were senior. It was my senior year in high
Right.
school. We were sitting in a class, not really doing much. And I just remember not wanting to really participate in a game that they were playing. And then I got like a call. I got called over the loudspeaker in my school. And right at that moment, it was just like, whoa. Like, cause I kind of was a quiet girl. I never really got into trouble. I was like the peacemaker, if anything. And then, so when they called me over the loudspeaker, it was like a sense of urgency. And
Right.
like, what did you do? So everybody was like, ooh. You know what I mean?
Taaj.
Oh, yeah.
Not quiet Taaj in Miss Ryder's class.
Exactly. So everybody, I even was like, whoa.
Right.
So, and then at the same time, like maybe after a few seconds passed, a friend of mine, Spoonie, in my school, she came to my door because she knew my mom. She knew my family. So she came and she opened the door and she was like, Taaj, like your mom is downstairs crying. And it was just so much. And I remember going downstairs and I just remember taking off running. Like I ran all the way down the hallway. Like I didn't know what happened.
Right.
At the time. But I don't know, to bring it back to my brother and the whole situation, it was very, very unreal. It was almost like a scene from a movie. Like I remember the police, they had like stations around my home, because after everything had gotten out, they were getting like threats because of what was done to my brother. So
Now, what was done to your brother?
So that's a great question. So,
I mean, to my understanding, it appears that it was, to say excessive force is like an understatement.
right.
And so I don't even know, I don't know how to explain the severity of what was done to this innocent young man who just happened to be, I don't even want to say wrong place, wrong time, but happened to fit the description of something that they were desperately looking for.
Right.
And so as a result of being desperate,
Right.
it appears he was the one that they took in because they were desperate. And when it comes to police killings, they want answers yesterday.
Right.
So by any measures, they want someone to hold accountable. And unfortunately, it happened to be your brother. Now, what was because of course, it doesn't say in the article what was done to him, but what kind of excessive force was used?
The interesting thing
Does
was,
the family even know?
yeah, we know.
Okay.
We actually had our own autopsy done. We ended up having my brother's body sent to Philly, I believe, to have our own independent autopsy done because nothing that they gave us was adding up.
Right.
So we were told that he died of an asthma attack. And the interesting thing was when my parents went to go and view his body, he was bruised. My brother was like your complexion.
Oh, so we bruise.
Bruised.
Ain't no, there's no getting away with that. Yeah.
It was all over his body, his
Wow.
rib cage area. And I know because I remember asking, I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was my cousin, my brother. Can't remember. But I really wanted to see the pictures. So they were like, no, you don't need to see them. And
Right.
like they were trying to keep them from me. And I'm like, I want to see them. And I was like persistent. And then finally they let me see the pictures and I will never forget them.
Do you regret that?
No,
No.
not one bit. His eyes, both of them were burgundy, but one of them was like black and blue and like really, really like sunken in. And then like his neck, he had like rings around his neck, like burgundy, blue, black. His ribs were blue, black. And the reason why I don't regret asking and actually seeing those pictures is because it has helped me with pushing forward and understanding how something like this can happen and be reduced and minimized to an asthma attack.
Right.
You understand? So
Yeah.
for some people to accept that and then just say, okay, that's it, and then turn the cheek, that's unacceptable. For me, I feel like I owe it to my brother, no matter what in the world. Like, my brother, they painted a picture of my brother that he was a thug, that he was all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, no one deserves that type of treatment.
Right.
And until I expire, I'm not
Gonna be quiet about this.
No. And I love
Right.
that you put that on your the media when you introduced me initially to social media, because it's not even the fact that I have a verbal fight. My fight is internal. My fight is quiet. My fight is educational. It's the understanding behind what happened and what we need to do as a people to be able to increase our standards and increase our value,
Right.
so that we can fight properly and fight. I always say, and I always said, you can't beat somebody you can't beat somebody else's game playing by your rules.
Right.
We can't make our own
Yeah.
rules up and try to beat a game. So for me, my mindset is, okay, understand things first. In order for you to be able to play effectively, you got to be able to understand it. And so that's where I owe that to my brother.
And just to, for anyone who has not seen, so the quote that she's referring to, I put up on my Instagram page when I promoted the show, and it's a direct quote from you. So, I surfed around, did a little research, and the direct quote from you, when I read it, it struck my heart. It struck my heart because I have only met you once before. And I didn't really know very much about the story. And it just resonated with me that here you are 20 years later. And so the quote is, 20 years ago, my big brother Earl was beaten to death by police, and I won't ever be quiet about that. And all too often we see things happening so frequently, and it has such a short shelf life.
Right.
To where, we're talking about it for 3 days, maybe
Yep.
a week at most, and then and then the next big thing comes in and takes our attention away. And so 20 years later, and there was an article about the 20th anniversary,
Yep.
so it is still something that, your whole purpose and your mission is to keep it on, on the front page and to keep it in our mouth and in our ears to bring awareness, and we know that this isn't something that we can change, but this is something that we can bring awareness to, just when things like this take place. So how has that, because we can't shut down the police force, right? So you still going about your day-to-day, living your life as an adult, and you are going to have to interact with police in one fashion or another, whether it's just driving your car or walking into a building. If you still live in certain areas or neighborhoods, you may see them walking down the street. I know I see police on my neighborhood streets all the time. How has that affected your interaction?
That's a great question, because initially, I despised the police. I remember,
Understandably so.
I could not understand, but I can say one thing. I remember sitting in history class with one particular teacher. I cannot remember his name, but I remember it was something that he said in history class when we were going over a subject, and he said, there's a slogan that goes along with the police in the United States of America, and it says to serve and to protect. But then he said there's another piece to that, which is there. I don't know if it's hidden. I don't know if they removed it or at some point, but I do remember it like it was yesterday. And he said the other part to that is to seek and destroy. So when everything happened with my brother, that was resonating with me at that time. And so right now I look at it like what they did to my brother was that exactly. They didn't serve and protect my brother. They sought and destroyed him. And they put out there that he had an asthma attack. But even through the trial, everything came out that they beat him up really badly.
Right.
The neighbors in that community were afraid to speak about the things that they saw out their windows. Other police officers that were a part of Orange Police Department at the time were afraid to speak out against the things that they saw, which was my brother was never officially booked. He was never taken to the precinct. No matter what happened with him or what they thought he did, he never had a chance to be able to defend himself. So he was beaten in the stairwell in the police department. From what we understand, he was walked in the back door or something like that, they said, and into this stairwell. So he didn't even
have a chance.
So for me, one of the things that I've grown into is understanding and forgiveness. And this is something that has been happening and working on me more recently. And so to answer your question, right now, I don't feel a certain way toward the police. I actually pray for them. I pray for the police officers who were involved. Initially, there were 21 police officers indicted. Of that 21, 5 were found guilty, and then 1 was let off like before the sentencing even occurred. So 4 police officers they did do some type of time. Back to forgiveness. There was a lady, I want to bring this up because I had went to one of my good friends graduated from college. And during the commencement speech, the keynote speaker, her name is Coco Kondo. I cried when I heard this lady speaking because her story was my story, but it was for something totally different. And she talked about being the youngest survivor of Hiroshima. And she was Japanese, and, her story was just amazing. And then one of the things that she said was she learned how to forgive the people who did this. So if this woman can stand on this stage and talk about forgiving people for dropping a bomb on her community, who am I to sit here and not be able to forgive the people who did this to my brother in order for me to move forward, in order for me to get my community and move us forward, right? And taking this terrible thing that happened to my brother and be able to say, okay, this can either make or break us. And if it breaks us, then what good are we going to be to our youth and our generations to come? So for me, this has been my world, is to let this situation make me better so that I can be better for the people around me so that we can understand what this is, right? So right now I have family members who are police officers. I have friends who are police officers, and I honor them. I respect them. I appreciate them because I also know that they're good police officers. They go out and they serve and
Right.
protect. They're not seeking and destroying because it's not about the uniform. It's about the people and the mindset up under it.
Right.
You know, so I pray for the families involved. I remember sitting through the trial and I remember looking at. I don't know. I'm an observer, so I just observed everything, and I watched every family member of every police officer. I watched them throughout the whole. I focused and I listened to what was being talked about, but I just was looking at these families because some of them had their rosary beads and they was just praying and praying and praying because it's like, you know, that what they did was wrong.
Right.
You know it, right? So, but it's like, okay, we're here. In the court case that we sat through, the trial, my brother was only being defended for his civil rights being violated. So these police officers that still went through this trial and still got this time, no one ever answered for his death. No one ever answered for his murder. But they were, and even at 17, I couldn't understand how I'm sitting here going through a trial for someone whose civil rights were violated, but they're not here in this seat as a defendant. They're dead. So how are we fighting for his civil rights and he's dead?
Right. Right.
I still don't understand that.
Now, I just want to kind of go back for a minute because I'm sorry. It's a lot. It's heavy. It's heavy. I can't. But my heart goes out to you and to your family because I can't imagine. But being 17, so I'm an educator, and I always try to tie it back some way to our young people, and so that is a traumatic experience.
Right.
So how did that affect you? Because I meet you today as a grown, whole woman, right, who is intelligent and well-spoken and articulate. And when trauma hits at that age, especially at that age, I mean, those are those pivotal teenage years.
Right.
It affects young ladies in particular.
Right.
And so how did that kind of, if at all, how did that trauma affect you then? And then what did you do, or have you done anything to get yourself to where you are today?
That's a great
I know
question.
that's loaded. I
know.
know.
I just want to make sure that I stay on target because that's so vital. And I know that this is girls empowering manifestation talks. As girls, as women, we have to pay attention to what we feel and understand it. So at the end of every feeling, from what I have studied and what I believe to be true, at the end of every feeling, you either going to have anger or happiness.
Right.
You might have a little numbness or weirdness in the middle, but when something occurs in your life, traumatic or whatever, right, you're going to have some type of reaction. So for me, I've just learned to pay attention to the way I react. And because I am an observer, I've always had this way about me where I sit back and I analyze things. I've never really been just like, ooh, I'm going. Like, I always had that, let me take a minute and figure this out. Or even I always call myself a delayed responsive. So sometimes, even in arguments, I hate arguing because I'm a little slow. I have
you
to
gotta let it digest.
Yeah, I'm like, oh,
and then
I
come back with the
said
comeback.
that, right? So then, people
Don't you hate
like,
when I hit you later? You laying in bed like, dang, I should have said.
yeah.
Now it's too late. It's too late. You can't recover that way.
And then everybody like, look, just leave it alone.
Delayed
Just drop
responsive.
it.
I like that.
So, but for me, that's always been my thing. And what I would say, back then I didn't know, right? I tucked it away. I pushed forward because you don't even know that things affect you sometimes.
Right.
You just kind of put a Band-Aid on it, and then you just move on through life. And then before I knew it, I had experienced so many other different things that I was learning how to just cover through and push forward. But I still always kept my energy about me, which was very peacemakerish, very just like, loving and let me help you and I'm a giver by nature. So once I got to the point where I had been beaten down with that and just tired of it, which was a little bit more recently in life, where I just became like, you know what, this is not working out for me. So I became very quiet. A lot of relationship issues that I had were just, me giving all of myself and getting like the bare minimum in return. Those situations forced me to become very quiet. And in addition to that, like just losing everything, being hit from every angle, and being able to just have to deal with me, nobody else around. So I respect, I've learned to respect, who is it, Karen White? What is the song? I've learned to respect the power of love. Okay.
Yes.
That. But then for me, I've learned to respect like the downfalls and the hurt and the pain, because it forced me to deal with me. It forced me to go back and then undo and take those Band-Aids off of the wounds that I had that was literally keeping me from reaching my goals, right? So I think for now, like, again, talking to the girls and the women out here, like, when we have certain issues that have the traumatic things that has happened, that has left us feeling empty and depleted and terrible and depressed, sometimes it's for a reason. Like I feel like it's God's way of helping us to get good with us. And my mentor, Stacey N.C. Grant, I love this woman so much. She always would tell me, like, you can't pour from an empty cup. Like, you have to pour from your overflow. And that's easy for somebody to say and hear, but to be able to understand that, I was like, what?
And put it to work.
Yeah, that was the work. So after I started doing that work on myself, like, oh, I love everybody. It's easy for me to go and do things for them and be there for them, but it's so hard for me to do things for myself. It's so hard for me to look in the mirror and say, Taaj, I love you. So I just let that happen. I took the time to do that, which, again, has been more recently. And even in doing that, right, I've started to see that things just happen when they need to happen. So me being at that graduation, and I hear that woman, Coco, speak about forgiveness, right? And she also talked about emotional intelligence. And then I was running into that more and more often, being able to understand how to handle yourself emotionally. Like, that's a very big deal. So I just started to listen. I paid attention when I heard things like that. Everywhere I went, it was like I was just getting messages that were helping me.
Oh, yes. The universe works in magical ways.
And then it was
yes,
like, too, all of this stuff, like, I just always set out with a goal and a plan to do something. And so when we talk about, like, bringing things into manifestation, right? Surrendering, right? Like, not taking things personal, not holding on to this thing because I love it so much and I can't move forward without it. But you gotta have to learn to let it go so that you can get to where God is taking you and to where you put out there in the universe that I want this. So if you want this, you're gonna have to let me work,
right,
and let me get you there.
So
right?
Shout out to all the mentors, because I don't think that people understand just the importance of having a mentor, because we are pro mentors here on this show.
Yes.
And I try to encourage that with all the kids that I work with, is just seeking mentorship. And when you brought that up, I mean, just shout out to all of the mentors that maybe don't necessarily know the effect that they have on the people that they mentor.
Right.
But it is huge, especially when you're dealing with trauma. Have you sought therapy?
So I did seek therapy, but it was for another issue.
Okay.
And I can, talk about it if you don't mind. It
No, not
doesn't
at
have
all.
anything to do with my brother's situation. But I even come live on my page because I like for people to really get a chance to know me. So this is like the first
We're just
time.
trying to do our part
Yes.
to break down those barriers.
And I love it.
And if you have not sought therapy, no shame in that. But if you have sought therapy, then for anyone who has experienced any type of trauma, we want to encourage that as much as possible. And if it's not therapy in the form of like a professional or traditional setting, even having dialogue with a mentor,
Right.
just being able to vocalize what it is that you're
Right.
feeling and experiencing can
Yes.
change the way that you feel about things. So I'm sorry, go
agree.
ahead. Didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
but that's so perfect. And one of the reasons why I actually just had this conversation with my sister this morning, and I told her because I have a 17-year-old, going on 17-year-old niece, and I'm like, she needs a counselor, she needs therapy, and you don't want to wait until
Right.
okay, another few more years come and go, and then you're saying, oh, I wish I would have did it then. Do it now. Like, let her get comfortable with it now so that she can have a better 3 or 4 years to come, right? So for me, I had experienced a couple of things that, like a string of events that was happening in my life, and I just was like, oh my gosh, like why me, right? All the time, it was like, okay, I've had enough, right? So I went to the doctor, and I found out that I was like early menopausal or premenopausal. And because I've always wanted a lot of children, like if you was to ask me how many children, like, do you want, like back in like maybe 10 years ago, I would say I wanted like 10 kids. Like I just wanted a clan.
You go, girl.
So,
Speak for yourself.
so the funny thing was, I just started to, get older, and I'm like, I don't know. The older I got, and then I had Sahar. So the older that I got, like the number started to go down. I'm like, yeah, maybe we're gonna take that to 10. We're gonna drop that 10 to 6.
When you start raising them, that number changes
Yes.
quickly. Hi, Sahar. Shout out to your beautiful daughter who's in the studio with us today.
So the number went down, but then and then just, being with the right partner and
Right.
all of this stuff, everything plays a part. So before I knew it, my numbers was just down. So I found out that I was premenopausal. And so with that, it was just like the doctor I had, she was very blunt. And she was like, do you have children? I was like, yeah, I have a daughter. She was like, well, good, because you might not
Love
be able
one
to
because
have
that's
any more.
it.
Yeah.
Basically.
And I'm going to be honest with you,
How
that
hurtful.
right there, I sat in my car and cried for like an hour. I could not move. And I still feel that hurt right now because I love babies and I love children so much. But I'm going to say this, like, being an educator is one of the most rewarding things. And being a teacher and being able to love on children and outside of having my own,
Right.
the connections that I've made with so many children is just like things that is poured into me so much and I never even knew it. So I'm like, you know what? If that was God's plan for me not to have any more of my own, then at
Right.
least I know that I did the work to reach others, and then I know that that is where I need to be to reach even more. So after that, though, I ended up needing to go to counseling because I shut down. And I didn't even know at the time that it was that. I just
Right.
knew that I had insurance, and I went to a doctor. It was almost like I stumbled upon therapy because I was like, look, I am not okay. And they sent me to someone, and I went and talked to this one lady, and it was the questions that she asked me that provoked the thought about what it was that was really affecting me.
Right.
And then it was almost like and if I can, like, I always like to explain a vision to the things that I'm saying. So it's almost like I had all this scribble scrabble in my mind. And by her asking me these particular questions, it almost untangled things. So if you have like a necklace that's like, oh God, give me that. I gotta take all these kinks, these
Right.
knots, get my necklace good. So
My headphones every
Yeah.
day. Just
That's
all
it.
tangled up.
that is
Yep.
it. And so at the end of my sessions with her, it helped me. And I was just like, oh, okay, I feel like me again. And then this is why I told my sister, I said, listen, we go to the doctor for, the GYN for our
Right.
women issues.
Right.
We go to the dentist for our issues with our mouth. We go to every doctor for something, but no one wants to go and have a conversation with someone who's certified
Right,
in
about your
understanding
mental
your
health.
mind. I said that is where Black people, especially people of color, we have to do better with that. And it's no longer at a point where we could really play around with it and tiptoe around it. We have to be honest and forthcoming and tell people. And even for me to be open and talk about this right now, like, this is a necessity because in
Right.
order for us to get what we need to be, we have to then be able to go and help our children. It's a generational thing. You know, we talk about breaking generational curses. That's one of the biggest ones, is us not being able to understand the importance and the power of our minds.
Right.
You know?
Right. Absolutely. Now, all too often, we really don't hear, I guess, the perspective of the family of the individuals. You know, within that window, we see the coverage, right? We see the way that they try to portray the individuals who are on the receiving ends of whatever the circumstances are.
Right.
And we don't always hear how all of that has affected the family. And it's not just the murder of your brother, but then it's the reputation, it's his legacy, it's the cameras that are, you know, stalking outside of your house, it's the perception of you now in your community. So it's a lot that I don't think we often take into consideration when these stories hit.
Right.
That is so much bigger than just another African-American male was murdered by the hands of police, who was unarmed, who was innocent, and, you know, case closed. So how has that affected not just you, but how has it affected your family unit?
As a unit, and I don't know if this particular incident, amongst many others, I would say that it definitely, it just made things a little bit more dysfunctional. Because again, therapy, I can't tell you how many people in my family has actually sought therapy and understand that that's something that was needed.
Right.
So I would say, you know, my family, we are close. Like, we love each other dearly. The love is so thick and so strong. But in terms of, you know, the communication piece, like, my family as a whole, we have a very, very troubling time with being able to effectively communicate with each other. And I can't say that it stems from this particular incident with my brother Earl. I just think it's something that so many community or families within communities deal with. Like, just being able to speak up and have an effective conversation. So, on another note, like, a couple of, I want to say, my memory is escaping me right now, but I believe within a year after Earl died, his mom passed away. And I remember, you know, things were just really, really bad. It was really sad. Like, the community, we were broken.
Right.
And one of the things that I can say, we would look on the news, and I'll tell you this because I think this is important when it comes to a media perspective and why I really don't trust the media. I remember we would sit around waiting for everything to come on the news. And then when it came on the news, just like you said, they vilified him, right? He was portrayed as almost like an animal. And it's like he was the one who was wrong.
Right.
So I remember being really excited to see the news because it felt like we were getting justice. And it was like, oh, okay, it's on the news. So, and I'm looking at the news thinking that everybody in the country, in the world, can see this because we can see it. But the reality was it never left outside our local area.
Right.
That media coverage never left outside of the small little circle area in which it happened. So while we were thinking that it was being seen around the world and in a bigger to a bigger, you know,
bigger audience,
it wasn't. Even and I started to pay attention to that once I started to, like, I've lived in other cities, like more South or Central Jersey, and then there are other organizations around the city around the state who do things in terms of, like, coming together to honor those people who were lost to police brutality. And I just remember, you know, sharing my brother's story with people, and people had no idea. They never heard of it.
Right.
So for me, you know, I like togetherness. I don't like false senses of togetherness though. And I think that for me the only way to really get around false senses of togetherness is to really, really be together and communicate. Because we can say that we're a family, and we are a family, but if we don't make the time to get together, to be with each other and know each other and love each other, things get a little airy and a little distant and a little weird. So I think that it has to be a very intentional thing for people who are family and who are together to be together, you
Yeah.
know? And so I don't know, like I love my family dearly, but I know that in with so many other families in other communities, like we have to make more of an effort and we have to make more of an intention, a
Right.
commitment to each other.
Yeah.
So with my family, I don't, like I said during Protected by Purposes podcast that I was a part of.
Yep.
What I said was I can never really speak for everyone in my family in terms of how this
It's affected
affected
them.
them ultimately, but I like to share my story because ultimately I do believe that this happening to my brother has forced me to be much more positive and much more perseverant to my goals, which is, and I'll share one of the things that I observed while working as a substitute teacher is that a lot of our students are very creative and they're they don't really thrive or do well in the environments that the school provide.
Right.
So with me knowing this, and then just to speak a little bit about who my brother was, like he was the family's artist. My brother could rap. He was friends with Tretch from Naughty by Nature. So one of the last things that we did, we actually went down with Naughty by Nature on a bus to go and watch them perform because they were really good friends. And then a little bit before that, my brother went and like was rapping. Him and all his friends, they were rapping at like some park at some kind of like festival. So he was an artist,
Right.
right? And I'm raising an artist. And when I go out into the communities and I'm seeing all of these children, and it's like they're artists and they don't even know it.
Yeah.
So in his honor, I have began to work on a foundation for my brother that I haven't put out there yet.
Oh, is this an exclusive?
Yes.
How exciting. We have an exclusive. Taj, what are you going to be working on in his honor?
So the foundation is literally just to go and work on these creative kids that don't know that they have it. So a part of me is gonna like be that mom to them and teach them things that maybe their parents haven't taught them, only because like we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
So another one of my backgrounds is early childhood development and education, and I've observed and studied parenting in the inner city communities. So for me, it's almost like I want to be able to help parents understand a little bit more from the things that I've learned, which are tools that I believe have been missing from our communities. And so in doing that, it's like a simultaneous target where I get to work with the parents and I get to work with the students.
Which is a wonderful thing because, sorry parents, myself included, but the child that you are raising at home is not the child that is sitting in that classroom.
Yes.
And that is reality.
That's reality. That's a fact.
Yes. So to be able to have that engagement with the kids in the class, but then to have that engagement with the parents and give them what it is that they don't see, because we are with those kids majority of the day, and usually we are with those kids throughout the school year more times than they are home with their families.
Right.
And so we see a very different child than who you all think that you are raising at home.
Yeah.
Who your wonderful quiet little babies are not that when they come into our classrooms. And so to be able to have, both and engage on both sides is a great thing, because as parents, we don't know who's sitting in that classroom all day. And there may be some skills that this child has that they're nervous to do in front of us, or they're embarrassed, or they only interact a certain way around their friends, and we don't get to see that. So that's a wonderful thing. That is a wonderful thing. You go, girl. You go, girl. So you are going to have to come back when this foundation is like up and moving so that we can really dive in.
Yes.
So I know that we had mentioned, we spoke kind of briefly off air about, I guess, some of the community organizations that have helped you and helped your family over these past 20 years. So we do want to bring some recognition to the People's Organization for Progress, also known as POP. And how has that organization helped you kind of through this transition of when it initially affected you, figuring out what you wanted to do with that pain, and then where you are today, where you're in a different space to kind of advocate on behalf of your brother in his just kind of in his what he wants to leave behind, in his memory, in his honor.
Legacy.
Right.
I think that, again, another great question. So for me, Pop, they were that organization, or they was. I don't know. Sometimes my grammar is like, what did I say?
Well, where they located?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Oh, they are based out of Newark.
Okay.
They're based out of Newark, New Jersey, and But what I'll say about Pop, and I'll also share their information as well, because I think that they do a lot in the community still, and they were very active 20 years ago. So they're very active still to this day.
And to just kind of go back for 1 second to the last show that we did, we had a very special caller who called in, Yonajaha Lone Wolf, and she is an advocate. She is an activist, and she kind of stands at the front lines. And one of the things that she said when we kind of asked her, what can a regular civilian do when they want to just get involved? And her very clearly was, find your local organization, call them up, and ask them what they need, because it's so much bigger than standing on the front lines and protesting and marching and all of that. But there are many, many different things in the background that also need to be done. So this organization is one of our local organizations, POP, right out of, Essex County in Newark.
Essex County.
And what did they do for you and your family?
They were there. They came, like, they had capes on, okay? They have their yellow shirts that they're very familiar, are very famous and popular for. When you see the yellow shirts, you just know that somebody is here,
Right.
you know? And I remember, they marched with us, and some things that I didn't participate with everything, but most of the things that were going on, I was there when they marched from like Montclair to like downtown Newark, I believe, something like that. We did as much as we could.
Long march.
I think it was like they said, what was it? I don't want to say 12 miles because that might be it though. I think they said it was a 12-mile walk or something, but they were there, right? Like, they had this thing about them that assured my family that we would get justice. And in addition to the People's Organization for Progress, you had like a lot of different community activists, like the current mayor of Newark, Raz Baraka. His parents were there, like my parents and his parents, and Pop and other local organizations. Mayor Al Sharpton would meet at the Baraka's home, from what my father would tell me. And it's like, they became our family. They became our extended family. And up until the commemoration that we did for my brother back on April 11th, right? Like, I went to them first. And I said, I do want to have something, to commemorate my brother, him dying. I said, but I want Pop to be a part of this, and I want you guys to just kind of like really get to know my brother before the situation happened, because they kind of came on the scene to help us and been helping us ever since. And I'm like, wait, let's go back a little bit, and let me show y'all firsthand. In addition to our younger generation who was coming up, and a lot of them haven't even really heard the stories. So when I tell you to get everyone in that room, the mayor, Raz Baraka, he came. Most of the members of People's Organization for Progress came. The family was there, the younger generation. It was so much history and knowledge in that room about my brother's case. So that's all that I wanted. I wanted for people to be able to understand the case, for the younger generation to get to know the case and my brother, because they weren't here. They weren't even born. And then for POP and the other organizations to be able to look back and say, this is who he was before all of this happened. He was a person. So, I've gotten questions about like, how did I feel that because I've reached out to the current mayor of Orange requesting an apology, like a verbal apology. I haven't gotten any response.
Wow.
I also forwarded that same email request to the city council of Orange. I have yet to get a response. So I've gotten questions from like the news reporters and stuff
Right.
like that who came, and they were like, well, how do you feel that they're all celebrating Joyce Carnegie, right? And and they didn't even acknowledge your request for an apology over your brother. And I said, well, my brother was still a person, just like Joyce Carnegie was a person, a human being. Underneath her uniform,
Right.
she had a family at home, people who loved her. And we all, had remorse for her. We all just were like...
Right. Because it's not about her.
Right.
Right.
So, but when they brought it back, that question, it's like, I don't know how to feel. All I know is that my brother was a person too. And he deserves his rightful honor, right? So,
Did they ever find who actually committed her murder?
yes. The person, I believe, after everything happened with my brother, I believe the person turned himself in.
Wow.
Yeah.
And still no acknowledgement from the city of Orange.
No.
Wow.
But I will say, though, in addition to sending that message to the city of Orange and the city council, I also had an interaction with the current assemblywoman,
Brittany Timberlake.
and I invited her because I noticed that she had recently passed a law or something like that is in motion to directly, deal with the police officers who are found guilty of violating people's civil rights or anything that happens to people while in police custody. So she didn't make it, or she couldn't make it. She had a prior engagement, but she sent a resolution with all the details on behalf of my brother, and it was amazing. So I was just like, I know that it's, it's progress.
Yes.
It's
And
progress.
thank you, Congresswoman Brittany Timberlake.
Yes.
And Medina Muhammad for all of the work that they do, because they are doing some amazing work in our local community,
Yes.
Which is right here in northern New Jersey.
Yes.
So I know that we are going to be wrapping up shortly, but so for one, do we have a caller? Oh,
Nice.
okay. Oh, right at the end. Okay. Yep. Send him through. Hi, caller. Welcome to Gem Talk.
Hey, everybody, it's Wanda.
Hi, Wanda. We miss
Wanda.
you.
Hey, guys. Hey, I am not going to stay on long because I know you're wrapping up. I was really missing you guys. I've been watching it, and, you did a fabulous, fabulous job. Taaj, thank you so much for sharing. Like, I know that you really helped some people, especially, just kind of talking about going through therapy and stuff like that, and
Absolutely.
really having to kind of go through those levels of healing, and forgiveness. So that's all. I'm just 2 seconds. You guys did an amazing job. I've been watching, and I was like, I missed them.
And I'm keeping your seat warm. Don't worry.
I know. So, yeah, I'm in Baltimore, and you did remember Crazy Like a Fox that came to you.
Yes.
I will talk to you. I'll let you guys wrap up, but I will talk to you guys soon.
Yes, thank you. And good
you.
luck at your event.
Alrighty.
And we will see you back here at Gem Talk in no time.
Okay.
All righty.
All right. Bye, Wanda.
Bye-bye.
So, Taaj, I know we do want to kind of leave some information
Yes.
regarding POP. Where can people, how can people get in contact with the organization, just to kind of find out what they can do
Yes.
to assist in, and it doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be something that has to do with police brutality. It is anything within the community. Is that correct, or are they specific to police brutality?
I believe that it's overall. I think that since that's one of the bigger things that goes on in the community, they're like front and center.
Okay.
But I do believe that there are other things that they support other different people with, right? So, what I will say, I'll give everyone their email address as well as their phone number, because I do think that they have a well organized organization where they, they come together, they speak on local things, and they are relevant. So the email address is info@njpop.org, and that's NJPOP is NJPOP.org, and then their number that's listed is 973-801-0001. So from what I believe, I don't know, there are different chains of commands and who's and what position, but I do know if someone was to reach out to them, they would definitely reach out and, be able to assist them.
Good, yes, because I know in the past, the past 2 episodes that we've done regarding this conversation, we were looking specifically for local organizations that, if regular everyday civilians who just their heart, something that they see has touched their heart and they want to be involved in.
Yeah.
And usually if it's not that close to home, we don't really know what we can do. We don't know how we can be of service. And so that is a great organization that someone can reach out to and kind of figure out what they can do to just kind of help and give back within their community. So I want to make sure that the legacy that your brother leaves behind is one that is of accuracy and one that is of integrity. So what do you want people to know about who he was and because clearly his life has not been in vain because his work has lived on through you. So what would you like? Just a couple of maybe some adjectives about who he is, who he was.
Charismatic. He also was a peacemaker. He had a way about him where he just was a good listener, so he had a way of being able to communicate in some of the loudest noises. And so that is what I remember from my brother. Like, no, he wasn't perfect, right?
Right.
I'm not perfect. I don't know anyone perfect.
No, I'm just kidding. Just jokey joke. I don't know if the camera was on me, but that's a little jokey joke.
I mean, we all strive for perfection because I think that's the
Perfection
goal.
is non-existent.
Yeah,
but yes,
but
so
to be
he was
good
human.
people, exactly. And he had a laugh that would like wake up a room. And so I think that in understanding who he was, right? Like, again, I saw in him his artistic abilities. And so, again, that is going to be the legacy. So the foundation that I'm setting up for him, we will need mentors. We will need creatives who are ready and willing to mentor a young, middle schooler or high schooler and be someone who can be effective in helping them to change the trajectory of their lives.
Right.
So I think that's it. I mean, my brother, for him to go out like that,
Yeah.
and for us to not even have gotten a thank you, an apology.
Right.
All that I could do is say, you know what? Even if we don't get an apology, I'm going to take it and I'm going to make a whole bunch more Earls that are effective in the world and that can come out and say, oh, I'm not going to say I'm going to make them because I can't do that, but I'm going to contribute to helping them
and
to get there.
them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Well, that is wonderful. So if there is anybody who would like to, I guess, get involved,
Yes.
where can they reach you? What's your Instagram?
Yes. So my Instagram is my name is Taaj Williams.
TAAJ.
TAAJ Williams. And also my email address is info@Taaj Williams. And Facebook, Taaj Williams there too. So all across the board.
Thank you for sharing space with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Looking at strength. So I just want to I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. Please make sure that you all follow our Instagram. I am at Girls Embracing Manifestation, and you can follow on Wanda at Uniquely Wanda for the next episode of Gem Talk the podcast. Thank you for being with us, dear. That was great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Until next time.
I am woman.